if this bill is supported. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. The Honourable Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, ports are vitally important for a small ocean-bound trading nation like New Zealand. The essential question that is raised by this bill is, do we want our ports run as efficient businesses or as bureaucratic council committees? Do we want our port companies, their decisions over governance, being made on sound commercial grounds, or do we want the decisions made on political grounds? Mr Speaker, I'm dumbfounded that we're even having this debate in 2012. Never has there been a time for our nation when we need to grow our exports, when we need to improve our competitiveness, when we need to grow our productivity, yet this bill would undermine every one of those objectives. In fact, this bill aptly illustrates the differences between the government and the opposition. Firstly, we're focused on the future. They want to take New Zealand backwards. They actually pine, and we heard it in Darian Fenton's speech, they pine for the days of industrial chaos and feather bedding on our ports that has actually been such a sad part of New Zealand's port history. You see, it's not so long ago, in the 1980s, that whether you were a truck driver or a crane driver or a loader driver, and as a student in the 1980s did some of those jobs on the port, is that if you did those jobs on the port, you got paid 2 or 3 times what you would if you did those jobs anywhere else. That was how inefficient our ports had become, because they were able to hold the nation to ransom, because they hold that crucial fulcrum position in the export and imports of goods in New Zealand. Actually, Labour members opposite, like Annette King, should be proud of the work they did in the 1980s to reform our ports, that was complemented by reforms that was put in place by National, such that we saw in the 1990s the fastest improvements in productivity on the New Zealand ports of anywhere in the world, of which we should be proud, that helped us grow exports and grow the strength of that economy during that decade. I am truly gobsmacked that Labour today wants to take us backwards. But not completely. Not completely. Because this is as much about not the national interest, but Labour's narrow interest of serving their Wolfie union mates. That's what this bill is really all about. You see, they want to use this bill as the tool to drag our ports back to the inefficiencies that typified the history of the port industry in New Zealand. And why that should worry New Zealanders is that every single export, every import that we pay for as consumers, risks going up in price if we allow the ports to return to their inefficiencies of the past. Now, it is, well, absolutely it has to do with it, Ms. King. This bill was tabled immediately in the months after the port dispute, and Darian Fenton made absolutely plain that this bill was all about the Auckland port dispute. But, Mr. Speaker, I have this question to ask members opposite. Who wrote the Local Government 2002 Act? Labour. Why did they in 2002 exempt port companies from those very provisions? Because they knew then that they wanted to have ports run on a proper business-like basis. But it's even more important if we look at that provision. Why is it that they have exempted port companies from these provisions in this bill, but what about the electricity companies? What about all the other entities that were listed in their bill in 2002? The simple answer is because this is simply about Labor doing the bidding for their wharfie union mates. Mr. Speaker, this bill is blatantly about special interests and lacks logic. Why is it, for instance, that members opposite think that local government New Zealand, 100% public entity, why it's not included? Why not the insurance company? Mr. Speaker, this bill is not about principle, it's about politics. They simply want to re-politicise the management of New Zealand's ports, and that's the very last thing this export growth government wants to occur. This bill is a nonsense. It shows how left Labor has become in their time in opposition, how out of touch they are with what we need to do to improve New Zealand productivity. Any member who wants to strengthen the New Zealand economy must vote against this bill.
I call the honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, there are...